Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. Lelia stood at the entrance of the sanctuary of trials, her wings trembling with anticipation. Before her, the towering gates shimmered with a light that seemed to come from every direction and none at all, as if the very air in heaven bent to illuminate this sacred place. It was a sight she had dreamed of all her life, a place only those worthy of the archangel's mantle could enter. She clenched her hands into fists, trying to suppress the nervous energy crackling in her chest. Today was the day. After years of training, of honing her abilities, she was finally here. She would face the trials and emerge as the new archangel, or she would fail and return as nothing more than an ordinary angel. But failure was not an option. Serafina, her mentor, had prepared her well. Lelia, she had said that morning, her eyes filled with both pride and concern, you must remember that these trials are not just a test of your power, they are a test of your spirit. Stay true to who you are, and you will find the light within yourself. Lelia nodded at the memory. She would not let her mentor down. She would not let herself down. A booming voice echoed from beyond the gates, causing her wings to flutter involuntarily. Lelia, angel apprentice of the celestial choir, do you enter the sanctuary of trials willingly, knowing the dangers you may face? I do, she replied, her voice steady despite the tightness in her throat. The gates swung open without a sound, revealing a brilliant corridor lined with statues of past archangels. Their faces were calm, serene, and filled with wisdom. They seemed to watch her as she stepped forward, their eyes following her every move. Lelia's breath hitched, but she kept walking, her gaze straight ahead. At the end of the corridor, a figure waited for her. Uriel, the current archangel, stood tall and imposing in his golden armor, his 6 wings stretched wide behind him. His expression was unreadable as he looked down at her. Lelia, he said, his voice a deep rumble. You have been chosen to face the trials and prove yourself worthy of the holy light. Know this, not all who enter succeed. The trials will test not just your strength, but your heart, your mind, and your soul. I understand, Lelia replied, though her stomach twisted with anxiety. She had heard the stories of those who had failed and the ones who had been shattered by the trials, never to recover. Uriel stepped aside, revealing a vast open space beyond him, bathed in a soft, golden glow. Then begin. Lelia took a deep breath and stepped into the light. The world around her shifted in an instant. The soft glow of heaven was replaced by the roar of wind and the smell of salt water. Lelia found herself standing on the edge of a cliff, the ocean crashing violently against the rocks below. The sky above was dark, swirling with storm clouds that threatened to swallow the horizon. Before her, a monstrous creature rose from the waves, its body covered in scales the color of night. Its eyes glowed with a fierce, unnatural light, and its maw opened in a roar that shook the very ground beneath her feet. The test of strength, she whispered to herself. This was her first trial. The creature lunged, its massive claws tearing through the air toward her. Lelia's wings snapped open, and she shot into the sky just as the creature's claws slammed into the ground where she had been standing. The force of the impact sent debris flying in all directions, but she didn't flinch. With a wave of her hand, she summoned the holy light, and a radiant spear appeared in her grasp, its tip gleaming with divine power. She threw it with all her strength, and the spear struck the creature's side, piercing its scales with a burst of light. The beast let out a deafening roar of pain but did not fall. Instead, it turned its furious gaze toward her, its eyes burning with hatred. It lunged again, faster this time, and Lelia barely had time to dodge. The wind from its swipe buffeted her, sending her spiraling through the air. Lelia steadied herself and summoned another spear, this time holding onto it as she dove toward the creature. She aimed for its heart, the holy light surging through her as she struck with all her might. The spear found its mark, and the creature let out a final, guttural roar before collapsing into the ocean, its body sinking beneath the waves. Lelia hovered in the air, her heart pounding in her chest. She had passed the first trial. But even as relief began to flood her, the world around her shifted again. The storm clouds above vanished, and the roaring ocean was replaced by a vast, open field of grass, stretching endlessly in all directions. The wind was gentle here, and the sky was a brilliant blue. It was peaceful, too peaceful. Lelia descended to the ground, her wings folding behind her as she looked around. There was no immediate threat, no monstrous creature to face. But that only made her more uneasy. She knew the trials were far from over. As she walked through the field, she caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of her eye. A flash of light, a movement in the distance. She turned, but there was nothing there. Just more grass. Then she saw it again, and again. Her heart began to race as the flashes of light grew closer, moving faster, surrounding her. She spun in place, trying to keep track of them, but they were too quick. They were everywhere, and nowhere. And then she saw a mirror, standing in the middle of the field, its surface shimmering with an eerie light. Lelia hesitated for only a moment before walking toward it, her footsteps slow and cautious. When she reached the mirror, she froze. The reflection staring back at her was not her own. It was a twisted version of herself, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes hollow and filled with darkness. Her wings were tattered, and the holy light that usually radiated from her was gone, replaced by a sickly, shadowy aura. Lelia took a step back, her breath catching in her throat. "What?" The reflection smirked, its lips curling into a cruel smile. "Is this what you thought you would become? A shining beacon of light? A savior?" Lelia's heart pounded in her chest. "You're not real." "Oh, I'm very real," the reflection replied, stepping out of the mirror and walking toward her. "I am the part of you that you refuse to acknowledge. The doubt, the fear, the weakness." "I am not weak," Lelia said, though her voice wavered. The reflection laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "Aren't you? You've spent your whole life chasing power, trying to prove yourself. But deep down, you know the truth. You're not strong enough. You never were." Lelia clenched her fists, the holy light sparking to life in her hands. "I've trained for this. I've earned my place here, and yet you're afraid," the reflection said, its voice softening. "You're afraid that no matter how hard you try, no matter how much power you gain, it will never be enough." Lelia's vision blurred with unshed tears. She wanted to fight, to summon her strength and banish this twisted version of herself. But the reflection's words cut deep, striking at the core of her insecurities. She struggled to find the words, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm not afraid." The reflection stepped closer, its voice a soothing whisper. "Yes, you are. But that's okay, Lelia. Everyone is afraid. The question is, will you let that fear control you, or will you face it?" Lelia stared at the reflection, her mind racing. This wasn't just a test of strength. It was a test of her heart, her soul. She had spent so much time focusing on her power, on her abilities, that she had never truly faced the doubts and fears that has been lurking inside her all along. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she dropped to her knees, the weight of her emotions crashing down on her. She was afraid of failing, afraid of being unworthy, afraid of never living up to the expectations placed on her. But as she knelt there, broken and vulnerable, she realized something. It was okay to be afraid. Fear didn't make her weak. It made her human. And it was in facing that fear, in acknowledging it, that she would find the strength to move forward. With a deep breath, Lelia wiped away her tears and stood. The reflection watched her, its cruel smile fading into something softer, almost approving. "I'm not perfect," Lelia said, her voice steady. "But I don't need to be. I will face my fears, and I will overcome them." The reflection nodded, its form beginning to shimmer and fade. "Then you have passed the second trial." And just like that, the reflection vanished, leaving Lelia alone in the field. The mirror was gone, and the flashes of light had disappeared. Lelia stood there for a moment, her heart still racing, but a sense of peace settling over her. She had faced her inner demons and come out stronger for it. But she knew the trials were far from over. The ground beneath her feet shifted, and the sky above darkened once more. Lelia found herself standing in a vast, empty hall, its walls lined with tapestries depicting scenes of angelic battles and triumphs. At the far end of the hall, a figure stood waiting for her, their form shrouded in shadow. Lelia's heart skipped a beat as she recognized the figure. Azrael, the fallen angel. "Welcome, Lelia," Azrael said, his voice smooth and melodic. "I've been expecting you." Lelia's wings tensed as Azrael stepped forward, his dark presence casting long shadows across the hall. He was everything she had been warned about, an angel who had fallen from grace, consumed by ambition and greed. His eyes glimmered with a kind of coldness that made her stomach churn. But there was something else in his gaze, too, something that made her pause, curiosity, perhaps, or recognition. "I've heard of you, Lelia," Azrael continued, his voice as smooth as silk. The young apprentice, eager to prove herself, to wield the holy light like a sword. "Tell me, how does it feel to be so close to what you desire?" Lelia didn't respond. She kept her stance firm, her fingers tingling with the holy light, ready to summon her power at a moment's notice. She didn't trust him. How could she? He had once been like her, destined for greatness, and now he was nothing more than a cautionary tale. "You don't have to be so guarded," Azrael said, a half smile curling on his lips. "I'm not your enemy. Not today. In fact, I'm here to help you." "I don't need your help," Lelia said, her voice steady but laced with tension. "I've passed the trials on my own." Azrael chuckled, the sound low and dangerous. "Oh, you think this is about passing trials, do you?" "That's where you're wrong, little one. The trials are not meant to be won by brute force or sheer determination. They are meant to open your eyes to the truth." "The truth?" Lelia narrowed her eyes. "And what truth is that?" Azrael's smile widened. "That the holy light you seek to master is not what you think it is. It's not about power, about control. It's about sacrifice. True power doesn't come from dominating others or proving your strength. It comes from giving up what you desire most." Lelia's heart skipped a beat. Sacrifice. She had been taught the importance of sacrifice, of selflessness. But hearing it from Azrael, a fallen angel who had once sought power above all else, made the words feel tainted. "You don't understand," she said, her voice tight. "You fell because you couldn't let go of your desire for power. You were consumed by it." Azrael's expression darkened, and for a moment, a flicker of something close to regret passed over his features. "Yes, I fell, but not for the reasons you've been told. I fell because I refused to accept the limitations placed on me. I refused to follow blindly. And now, I stand before you, not as a cautionary tale, but as a lesson. You think you're different, but you're not. You're just like I was, hungry for power, desperate to prove yourself." Lelia's wings flared as anger surged through her. "I'm nothing like you." A sudden burst of energy radiated from her, the holy light crackling around her hands. She raised her palm, prepared to strike him down, to rid herself of his poisonous words. But just as quickly as the anger came, doubt followed. What if there was truth to what he said? What if her desire to become Archangel was rooted in something deeper, something darker? Azrael watched her, his eyes sharp, as if sensing her internal struggle. "You're afraid," he said quietly, "afraid that you won't be enough, afraid that no matter what you do, you'll never be worthy of the holy light. That's why I'm here to offer you a way out." Lelia's breath caught in her throat. "A way out?" He nodded. "You can choose to walk away from this path, Lelia. You don't have to finish the trials. I can give you what you want, a power, without the burden of sacrifice. All you need to do is accept." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and suffocating. Lelia's mind raced. She had fought so hard, had come so far, and now here she was, being offered everything she had ever dreamed of without having to face the final test. But something deep inside here, something she had learned in the mirror trial, that held her back. "I won't take the easy path," she said, her voice stronger now, filled with resolve. "I'm not afraid of sacrifice. If I want to become Archangel, I'll do it the right way. I won't make the same mistakes you did." Azrael's expression shifted, his smile fading into something colder, more calculating. "So you think you can succeed where I failed?" His wings spread wide, casting long shadows across the hall. "Very well, then. But remember this, Lilia, every archangel before you has made sacrifices. Some were willing, others were not." Without another word, the hall around her dissolved, melting away into darkness. Lilia found herself standing in a vast, desolate wasteland, the sky above her an oppressive gray. The air was thick with the scent of ash, and the ground beneath her feet was scorched and barren. She was alone. Lilia's heart pounded in her chest as she looked around, trying to make sense of her surroundings. Where was she? What was this place? Then she heard Ida's voice, soft and distant, calling her name. She turned toward the sound, her wings twitching with unease. "Lilia." The voice was familiar, achingly so. Her breath caught in her throat as she saw the figure standing a few paces away, a figure she recognized instantly. It was her mother, her wings as pure and radiant as Lilia remembered them. She stood there, smiling, her arms outstretched. "Mother?" Lilia's voice was barely a whisper. Her mother's smile widened, and she took a step forward. "Lilia, my darling, I've been waiting for you." Lilia's heart ached. Her mother had passed many years ago, taken by a battle that had left heaven in mourning. To see her now, standing there as if nothing had happened, was both a joy and a torment. How are you here?" Lilia asked, her voice trembling. Her mother's eyes softened. "I've always been here, watching over you. I've seen your struggles, your pain, and now I'm here to guide you." Lilia's wings fluttered, and she took a hesitant step forward. But something felt wrong. This couldn't be real. Her mother was gone, yes, she knew that. And yet, the longing in her heart made it hard to resist. "I miss you," Lilia whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I know, my love," her mother said, her arms still outstretched. "But you don't have to miss me anymore. You can stay here, with me. You don't have to continue the trials. We can be together, like we were before." Lilia's heart shattered. The temptation was overwhelming. She had spent so long feeling the weight of her mother's absence, and now here she was, offering her the chance to escape the pain, to find peace. But then she remembered Azrael's words. "The trials are not just about power, they are about sacrifice." Her mother's smile faltered, just for a moment, as if sensing the shift in Lilia's thoughts. Lilia's wings flared as she stepped back. "You're not real." Her mother's face twisted, the gentle expression turning dark, almost menacing. "Lilia, don't be foolish. You don't need to sacrifice anything. You can have everything you want: peace, love, family. Isn't that what you've always longed for?" Lilia shook her head, her fist clenching at her sides. "You're not real," she repeated, her voice firm. "And I won't let this illusion take me from my path." The figure of her mother snarled, the warmth in her eyes replaced by a cold, venomous gaze. "You think you're so strong, don't you? But you're just like all the others, so desperate for something you can never have." Lilia raised her hand, summoning the holy light to her fingertips. "I'll find my strength in sacrifice. That's the true path to the holy light." With a burst of radiant energy, she banished the illusion, her mother's form dissolving into nothingness. The wasteland around her began to crumble, the sky cracking open as light poured through. Lilia felt the warmth of the holy light washing over her, healing the wounds left by the trial. She had passed. As the world around her returned to the golden glow of heaven, she saw Uriel standing before her once more, his expression unreadable. "You have faced your greatest fears and conquered them," Uriel said, his voice carrying a weight of authority. "But there is one final trial left." Lilia nodded, her body weary but her spirit strong. I'm ready. Uriel gestured toward a distant, glowing portal. The final trial will test your understanding of sacrifice. You will face a choice, one that will define you as an archangel, or strip you of everything. Without hesitation, Lelia stepped toward the portal, her wings lifting her into the air. She passed through the glowing veil, ready to face whatever lay beyond. The light gave way to a battlefield, a grand celestial war, with angels and demons locked in combat. The sight was overwhelming, the noise deafening. Fire and light clashed in an eternal struggle, and in the center of it all was a golden chalice, glowing with a divine,